Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Augusta. We are delighted to welcome you to our virtual service. I'm Jezebel Anat and I'm your worship associate for today. One new feature that we have added to our services is a Zoom discussion. The link for that is on our Facebook page. You do have to pre-register. And we're also going to try to put a link in the YouTube comments. Hopefully that will work. And if you haven't been able to pre-register any other way, you can check down to the comments and go ahead and pre-register so you can join us for a virtual coffee hour and sermon discussion. But you'll be at home, you'll have to provide your own coffee. I also remind everyone that while our building is closed, our pastoral care is still available, so please feel free to reach out to us with any concerns, or if there's any ways that we can help in anything we can do, we are here for you. And so now, let us enter into a time of worship. We are delighted to have Ruth Pendergast from our choir here to lead our singing. Our opening hymn is number 188, Come, Come, Wherever You Are, and we'll sing it through 3 times.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
And this morning, our guest in the pulpit is a very familiar face and friend to many of us, the Reverend Dr. Sid Gates. We are very excited to have our first guest speaker since we've been on our COVID lockdown. And Sid has spoken at our worship services many times. He's also spoken at the Aiken UU Church, and he is part of the Progressive Religious Coalition. He's an ordained Presbyterian USA member, but he's also a full-time psychotherapist in private practice, which he's a founding partner. He does individual, couples, and family counseling, and he's also a known community leader and organizer, and he's worked with many programs intersecting moral, ethical, and the common good and spiritual concerns. He's married, and both his wife and daughter are nurses.
Thank you, Jezebel, for that welcome and introduction. It is always good to be in your midst, whether it's virtual, astral projection, live, peeping in, popping in, whatever. But this truly is like family. You were saying that earlier, Jezebel, and I really appreciate that description. I have a real history here. My wife and I have attended through the years. We've got good friends here. And whether I've been a part of a program or worship or what have you, or I'm an attendee, it has always blessed me to be here. I've learned from and with this worship community here, and I'm very grateful for that. Fun stuff here too, jazz concerts and feast and other events, films. So again, I have always enjoyed coming here, and I especially appreciate being invited in this capacity. Much has transpired since I was last in the pulpit here in this congregation with each one of us. I got to marry my daughter. That didn't sound quite right, but I officiated my daughter's wedding last weekend. And we had all the COVID protocol, but it was still wonderful. And I've done weddings for over 30 years. But this was the first time I got to answer the question myself, who presents this woman to be married to this man? And I got to ask the question and then answer it. Oh, I do, and my wife. So that was kind of fun. But of course, much has transpired with COVID, Black Lives Matter. We're going to be touching on some of those in my homily today, but maybe some other places as well. And I'm really coming from a place of focusing on the dearth of wonder and awe that we see so often in our society and in other nations around the world. So to kind of get us ready for what this service will be about today, a leitmotif, a recurring theme, I would like to read a quote by Albert Einstein that I think gets at what I will largely be about in this service, and for the feedback, the coffee conversation Sunday at noon as well. Here we go from old Albert. The most beautiful and profound emotion we can experience is the sensation of the mystical. It is the sower of all true science. He or she to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead.
Our living tradition draws from many sources, and for today's sermon, which is entitled For Lack of Wonder, I'm going to read our first source as our chalice lighting. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Now is the time in our service where we come together to share our joys and sorrows within our beloved community. And the way we do that is by dropping a stone, symbolic of the earth, into the water of cleansing, healing, and renewal, and a reminder of the ebb and flow of life. Our first stone is for those who cannot be with us here today, which is actually all of you. But we know that not everyone watches at the same time. So this is our stone of connection. We may be watching from different places at different times to remind us that we are all one community. Our second stone is for those deployed in military service. We did receive a sorrow from Tracy Craig. Her sisters, Jennifer and Irene, who live in central Illinois, have contracted COVID-19. They are quarantined at home and recovering, and they would appreciate healing thoughts and loving prayers from our family. So this is for Tracy's sisters, Jennifer and Irene. And I would like to light one more stone for all of those affected by COVID. Those who have perished, those who are suffering, those who are still uncertain, and for those who are essential workers who are concerned about being in the public and have had to make the choice to choose between the economy and their health, and also for those whose incomes are affected by this devastating virus. We hold all of you within the embrace of our beloved community. We'll take a breath and hold the healing light for all those affected by this disaster. Blessed be. We are a beloved community that supports each other, spiritually, morally, personally, and we also need your financial support to keep this church going. We're making more efforts to reach out with social media, and we've had to get some new technology and some systems to be able to be connected via Zoom and via the internet. And we really appreciate your donations in order to sustain our material reaching out and our still being able to sustain our physical presence here among you. So please give as you can.
Our meditation today is a reading from a book entitled Darwin, Divinity, and the Dance of the Cosmos by Bruce Sanguin. And I would like to challenge us all to, as I read this and it sinks in, to imagine being a 2-year-old. Take yourself back to when you were a child, and let's try to look through the eyes and experience of a child as I read this, and we pause to let this percolate for a while, if you will, in our consciousness, and perhaps our subconscious as well. So here we go. This is from Bruce Sanguin's book, and the chapter is entitled The Disenchantment of the Universe, Weaning from Wonder. If you want to gain a sense of the wonder of the world, take a walk with a 2-year-old. Do not be in a hurry. I learned this with my own daughter. Every twig and blade of grass was an occasion for her to squat down and take a real good look. Without the same agenda-driven, caffeine-infused urgency of her father, a bug struggling through the forest of grass was an opportunity for relationship. I remember the monk-like, single-minded attention she bestowed upon this creature. Similarly, a piece of colored glass stopped her in her tracks for a good 5 minutes as she turned it over and over in the sun to capture the changing colors. An hour passed, and we hadn't progressed even a block. Such is the enchantment of 2-year-olds for the natural world. It takes a good 15 to 20 years for our educational system to wean people from wonder, to demystify and disenchant the universe. This weaning from wonder is a tragedy and a travesty. no doubt all of us can dial up in our lives times that we have had that were awe-inspiring, some reality that defied our customary experience of life. So many possible examples here. In my mind, I go to the Grand Canyon. My wife and I were out there once for a special anniversary, and it was just a sensate overload to stand there at that great pit and to just imagine how it was created. So we can all, again, bring to mind experiences we've had, things we appreciate, the pyramids, the Statue of David, the Mona Lisa, evocative plays on Broadway perhaps have been awe-inspiring for us. Live music. Some of us who are sports devotees, a shot at the buzzer to win a game or a home run in the bottom of the ninth. A famous person, a medical miracle, are just but a few examples of how we can be amazed, awestruck, and just stopped in our tracks. But some would counter that there has been a drift in folks having a certain appreciation and a focus on the world around them, what I would call awe capacity or a wonder will. And this is not to bash at all wonderful communication we have, social media. It's a lifesaver for shut-ins. Nobody is going back to walkie-talkies or telephones on the wall or anything like that. But because of these means, these tools, we can see just about anything in the world instantaneously, 24/7. And there tends to be a been there, done that kind of reality that sinks in. We have ennui and boredom, and we're hardly impressed anymore with just the glut that we have of the visual, the optics. And even if we get a jolt, like encountering something I mentioned earlier, meeting a famous person or going to a play on Broadway after COVID, or virtually even, many of us saw the wonderful play several weeks ago that was re-released by Disney, Hamilton. But even if we encounter a seven wonder of the world experience, we tend to relapse and we tend to go back to form and the trough of boredom. I really don't care, do you? Was large lettering on the back of a Tony jacket worn by the First Lady several years ago as an official visitor to a children's shelter on the U.S.-Mexican border amidst the family separation controversy. Some could argue that this has become the mantra for a generation that has become satiated, entitled, overstimulated, under-spiritually attuned, indifferent, and just connectedly tone deaf. Many would suggest and implore that we must get our groove back on regarding awe, and not just awe that comes with experiences that have us exclaim, gee, I've never had anything like this happen to me before, but the awe that allows us to be moved by even the commonplace and the ordinary. Such awe compels us to not only care and value life and all things in us and around us, but to have such care and valuing charge us to find ways to promote for all more abundant life, as Jesus states. No question that awe and wonderment are part and parcel of a reflective and deep-running spiritual life. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel escaped from Nazi Germany, and he is a rabbi in a long line of rabbis, and he became a venerated theologian in this country, marched with Dr. King, good friends with William Sloane Coffin, and a lot of neat spiritual activists in this country. He crossed religious lines with his writings of hope, inclusion, social justice, and did much for true, genuine interfaith dialogue. Heschel instructs us, awe precedes faith. It is the root of faith. We must grow in awe in order to reach faith. We must be guided by awe to be worthy of faith. Many of us know and have read, even if we just see Scripture, the Bible, as great literature or instructive information or Word of God, but we know the story of Solomon, old wise King Solomon, who asked God for wisdom, not for riches or power, but prayed for wisdom. And he was granted riches and power, but only because of the order, and he asked first for wisdom. Similarly, Rabbi Heschel writes in the preface to his book of Yiddish poems, I did not ask for success, I asked for wonder, and you gave it to me. Wonder or awe may not be what many of us hold to be an essential of faith, but Jesus certainly revered this dynamic as well. Ever how we see Jesus, great teacher, rabbi, son of God, what have you. More on that momentarily. But we tend to forget that Jesus was raised a Jew, and his teachings and values were rooted in this great religious tradition. Inherent to this faith, no question, is the aspect of wonder. Heschel believed deeply in the importance to a faith in a coexisting healthy world of awe and wonder, and he got that from his Jewish tradition. He just as fervently deemed its absence catastrophic, and he contends, once again, as civilization advances, the sense of wonder declines. Humankind will not perish for want of information, but only for want of appreciation. The beginning of our happiness lies in the understanding that life without wonder is not worth living. What we lack is not a will to believe, but a will to wonder. And then he adds, awareness of the divine begins with wonder. One more time, awareness of the divine begins with wonder. Einstein, who I mentioned earlier, also similarly submits to us, my sense of God is not a deity, but a profound sense of wonder. I mentioned Jesus earlier and his reverence and veneration for the natural world and all that was around him. He spoke of the lilies of the field, sparrows, and other natural kinds of realities and wonders to behold. Humorously, Emily Dickinson once claimed that Jesus' charge to consider the lilies of the field as the only commandment she never broke. Most theologians and Bible scholars would agree that Jesus' appreciation of children lay in many ways in their great faithfulness, but also their sense of wonder. And we all know how children become transfixed with simple things. I read from a book earlier in the part of the service, the meditation about having the mind of a 2-year-old or trying to recapture that kind of zeal for all around us. But for a child, a dandelion that's blown and the seeds take off in 1,001 directions, a rainbow to be gazed upon, a rainstorm to be enjoyed and not loathed and avoided, a friendship to be fully experienced in the moment. Children are so deft at that. I love a perspective from a wonderful book entitled Spiritual Literacy, Reading the Sacred in Everyday Life. Great title, one more time. Spiritual Literacy, Reading the Sacred in Everyday Life. And we read in that book, indigenous tribes all over the world see the sacred in all things and rejoice in the discovery of new marvels. Curiosity is their vitamin. In other cultures, it may be up to children to keep wonder alive. They tutor adults in the art of surveying life with, and I love this expression, fresh eyes. And this is so key, seeing life with fresh eyes, this in-the-moment kind of thing. A tragic and sensational way for it to be occasioned, but the COVID-19 reality has aided many of us to see with fresh eyes, to appreciate things that maybe we were taking for granted before, relationships, but literally see with fresh eyes. I was reading the other day about a city in India that the inhabitants had never seen the mountains that surrounded the city, that was just a few miles away, but because of less transportation, less emissions, pollution, they could see the mountains for the first time in many of their lives. Again, it's a terrible way for it to be occasioned, but the COVID-19 reality in many ways has sensitized, not desensitized, many of us to appreciating things that we had taken for granted before, we thought was perhaps commonplace. If it is believed that black and other lives of persons of color matter, we cannot stand by and watch systemic, economic, justice, health, and other areas of oppression take place. No, you and I didn't participate in the public lynching of George Floyd, but we do aid and abet conditions which squeeze figuratively and literally the life out of those Jesus called the least of these. I have to go to the well one more time with Rabbi Heschel. A well-known quote of his is, and I've seen this in film, it's not always given credit to him, but what a diamond quote here this is. In a free society, some are guilty, all are responsible. And that gets back to George Floyd and other atrocities that we've seen through the annals of history. Some are guilty, but all are responsible. The opposite of being present and fully being about wonderment might be apathy. And apathy is really tough in my work. Many of you know that I'm a marriage and family therapist in private practice. And I had much rather have anger than apathy. Anger means somebody cares about something. So when I have couples coming in warring where I almost have to blow a whistle to call for a timeout, I would rather have, and I will inform them, I would rather have this anger, this passion. It means you care. We just have to message it differently. But apathy is hard to pump up. Apathy is hard to get off the canvas, if you will. And it leads to a me-first philosophy. And as we know, this is not what the great religions of the world instruct their devotees to believe, that it's all about me. And if my life is not going totally right, all is wrong with the universe. But the good news is that if apathy and self-indulgence can lead to dull, listless living and even global consequences, awe, wonder can invigorate faith and healthy connecting with the animate and inanimate world. The actor and comedian Lily Tomlin had a great monologue I saw years ago about the need to practice awe aerobics. Awe aerobics, what a great concept, and she is right on. Whatever exercises work for us to regain wonder, we need to make this part of our spiritual life. Modern-day Catholic priest and hugely popular author and lecturer Richard Rohr teaches the simple lessons are often the most profound. And I quote, "All you have to do is walk outside and gaze at one leaf long and lovingly until you know, really know, that this leaf is a participation in the eternal being of God. It's enough to create ecstasy, for a true contemplative or gratuitous falling leaf will awaken awe and wonder just as much as a golden tabernacle in a cathedral. Wonder is the basis of worship." Thomas Carlyle reminds us our worship, and I would reinforce, in and out of a beautiful worship space such as this, is certainly needing to be about awe and wonder as an underpinning. So how do we know if we have this kind of healthy awe quotient? There was a 13th century mystic in the Rhineland by the name of Mechtild Magberg, I think that's how you pronounce it, who once said, "The day of my spiritual awakening was the day I saw and knew I saw in all things God, and God in all things." More than ever, we need to rediscover the fundamental and essential place for awe and wonder in our attempts to be fully human. And in so doing, we not only recharge our spiritual batteries, but we impact and inspire others with a faithful message to love, be invested, champion the cause of justice and peace, and to live in all ways for the possible. Amen.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs us within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Some of us are old enough to remember a song from 1957, The Book of Love by the Monotones. And it begins with the lyrics, I wonder, wonder who wrote the book of love. If there is such a thing as a book of love, it certainly has a chapter on awe and wonder. May we all be inspired and moved by having real awe and wonder in our lives. So go in peace and practice such and challenge others to be about the same.
Good morning. Before I do the postlude, I just want to thank Ruth Pendergrass for adding her wonderful vocals this morning. It really was a pleasure having her here. Here is a piece that I wrote while I was in the mountains last month. It's really a clarinet and piano piece, and I wrote it for my sister who's learning clarinet, but I'll just play it as a piano piece today, and it's called Appalachian Stroll.